to our second segment talking about New Year's resolutions. This topic we started off last week looking at how to set them, and today we're midway through January. So at this point, a lot of people are still maybe experiencing some momentum and motivation to keep to their resolutions, while many others already might find themselves struggling. You know, it's not uncommon to kind of plan these great resolutions and to kind of see the value in them, and yet to wake up the next day and to find that, your friend motivation has not shown up to the party. And it's very difficult, it can feel, to actually stick to this stuff when motivation isn't there. So today I want to just keep this video a bit shorter, kind of keep this as something useful and hopefully bite-sized that you can take. One of the concepts I like to talk about with people I work with is the idea of ketosis. You might have heard of the keto diet, right? And I'm not talking about the keto diet for the body. I'm talking about it for the mind. And that's what I want to tap into today, if that's all right. So for those of you who might not know about what keto is, maybe you've heard about it or you don't really, you're not exactly sure. Keto is basically, it's a model of eating where you essentially focus on foods that are high fat and protein based, and you strictly limit the amount of carbohydrate intake that you receive. So basically you'd be eating a lot more things like, coconut oil and yogurt, high fat foods like that, the meats and eggs and lots of things like that are high fat, high protein. But you'd be, leaving out things like bread and rice and pasta and all the stuff that is high carbohydrate. Now, this is not a nutrition talk, and I'm not an expert in nutrition. We'll get to talking to someone who does more of that down the track. But what I'm talking about here is what happens to the body. So basically, I'm just going to share my screen so we can kind of get into it, right? So here's foods on the screen that you can see right now, foods that are high in fat and protein, right? And even there's a bowl of rice. I'm not sure why there's a bowl of rice. Someone snuck that in. There shouldn't be that in the picture, and potato too, unless that's cauliflower, in which case it would be okay. Anyway, so keto, right? We've got keto, and this particular diet, right? What happens is that the body normally uses something called glucose as energy, right? And so glucose is broken down from carbohydrates. So essentially, if you imagine you eat a carbohydrate, and that carbohydrate, when it goes into your body, it easily gets transformed into this glucose. In other words, sugar. You can see sugar is let's call that the readily accessible energy for your body. So as soon as you have sugar, it translates into energy very quickly. That's why you kind of hear the kind of concept of, don't give kids high sugar foods because they're going to be bouncing off the walls, because that particular food turns into fuel and energy very quickly and in very high proportion straight away. Sugar is very easily translated into energy. Now, in brackets, I'm just saying I'm a psychologist, not a nutritionist. So this is just what I've come to understand. So hopefully for the purpose of this metaphor, what I'm saying is accurate enough. Now, in terms of sometimes people say, well, I don't have much sugar. And what they're often meaning is I don't eat many lollies, I don't have many sweets, I don't put sugar in my coffee or tea. But if we're eating high carbohydrates, then that translates into sugar. That still will translate into sugar in your body. So it's the same thing. Now, in the keto diet, you essentially starve your body of things that can translate into sugar, carbohydrates and sugar itself. And so in a sense, we'd say, well, then the body's going to not have energy. If sugar is the energy source, then it won't have energy. But that's not exactly true, because the body can use can use something else for energy. And so what happens is that when you starve your body of carbohydrates, your body taps into fats for energy. It creates ketones from your liver. I believe ketones are created, and they will essentially, the way I learned it when I was working at the health retreat that I used to work at was that ketones, I remember the word key, and I kind of see that here's the fat cell, coming, here's the big fat cell. And then you come in with the key, and it unlocks the fat cell and releases the energy. So in other words, there's an extra process required when we are using fats as energy, but it absolutely is a potential and reliable source of energy is fats. We just need to do another process to get there. And so when people eat fats for long enough and starve of carbohydrates or reduce carbohydrates, you can actually test your blood for something called ketones, these keys that I talked about. And when there are high levels of ketones, it means that your body is now likely using fats as energy. So that's enough talking about nutrition. I'm going to talk about now psychological ketosis, because what we see is that just like the body has two fuels, right, fats and glucose, I would say that the mind also has two fuels. And when we're setting up New Year's resolutions, we really need to be able to tap into both fuels, because there's going to be a time where one of those fuels is not there. So let's talk a bit about this, right? So we have two fuels for action, right? One of these fuels is our thoughts and emotions. What we think and feel is very powerful to drive behavior. For example, if you get up in the morning and you think it's a fantastic day, and you think, I can't wait to go for a run, or I can't wait to do my Pilates routine, or whatever it is, if that's your New Year's resolution, for example, and you feel very excited and you feel very positive about that, then we would be, you can see that this thought and emotion very powerful to drive behavior. It's also powerful in the reverse. If you wake up in the morning and instead of those thoughts, you have thoughts like, oh, I can't be bothered, I'm tired, I just want to relax, I just want to take it easy. If you're having those sort of thoughts, equally, then you can kind of see that, well, you probably won't do it, in a sense. You probably won't do it. If you're feeling unmotivated, feeling flat, feeling like you can't be bothered, well, your action might be just to have another sleep rather than go and exercise, have a bit more sleep. So when this happens, let's look at motivation first of all. So motivation is essentially, one way to look at it functionally is when your thoughts and emotions are consistent with the behavior that you want to do. When your thoughts and emotions are consistent, in other words, when kind of like a sailboat on the water, when the wind is pushing you the way you want to be heading, you can just allow that to take over, and if you think about things that you're motivated to do, it kind of feels like that, right? Like it just naturally takes place. The things you enjoy doing often, it naturally takes place because your thoughts and emotions are collectively combined to push you and to kind of drive you towards a particular action. So here you can kind of see that behavior is going to feel kind of natural based on whatever you're thinking and feeling. And it's the same with these New Year's resolutions that we set, right? That when our thoughts and emotions are there in harmony with our resolution, when we get up and we're having thoughts like, I'm going to stick to my plan, of doing this, and you're having those natural thoughts and you're feeling positive about it, then motivation is there. There's a time where this coincides with your values, like what we're talking about, and there's a time where it diverges from values. In other words, there's a time where your values are that you see this commitment through, that you see this resolution through. But there's a time where your mind is actually not your ally, where the wind seems to be blowing against the way you want to be heading. And so instead of thinking, I can't wait to go for a run or these sort of things, your mind is saying, it's a bit cold outside, or maybe it's saying it's too wet. Maybe it's saying I'll do it tomorrow. I can always get back to it tomorrow. Whatever your mind is saying, the action it's motivating you towards is actually inconsistent with the value that you had. So when that happens, this is where we need to tap into this other fuel. This other fuel we call commitment. Now, this might sound common sense, but just bear with me here, because when thoughts and emotions are not conducive for what we want to be doing, right, for valued action, commitment, or in other words, willingness, are the other fuel we need in order to drive us towards our values. Let me put it this way, right? Let's do a little exercise. I want you to just think a thought in your mind, right? Think a thought in your mind. Just do this for me. Just kind of think the thought, I will not raise my arm. Just kind of think this over and over. I will not raise my arm. I will not raise my arm. I will not raise my arm. Just kind of have that thought. And when you've really got it there, in your mind, you can hear it, you can see that thought going round and round. I want you to do this. Keep the thought there, but at the same time, do this. Now, some people struggle with doing it. Some people do it straight away. Some people don't do it. And if you didn't do it, I just ask you, just do it. Just raise your arm and keep having the thought, I will not raise my arm. What you kind of see is that while thoughts and emotions, let me come back. While thoughts and emotions are certainly a powerful and readily accessible fuel for action, they're not the only fuel for action. In fact, they don't determine what you do. They just often influence what you do naturally. But they're not, it's not compulsory that we act based on our thoughts and emotions. And you can probably think of many times in your life where you had a thought and feeling to do something, but instead you had a value that kind of pointed you in a different direction, and you were able to act in line with that value. In that moment, you were tapping into this other fuel source called commitment, called willingness. Some people call it faith. You may call it different things, but the point is that it's not based on motivation anymore. This is based on choice and will. The point being that if we want to stick to resolutions for the new year, then we need to start shifting into the second fuel source, because there will be a time when the environmental conditions of our life, be it literally outside or be it in what's going on in our lives, in our relationships, in our work and everything, where those circumstances compromise our thoughts and emotions. And in those times, when that happens, then it's important for us to have this other fuel source. Just like the fats, commitment takes a bit of extra steps. It takes you to know what matters beyond what your thoughts are telling you. And it takes you to move your body in ways that even your mind might not be in agreement with. Nonetheless, just like raising your arm, it's absolutely possible to do. And the more you start to do this, the more you realize that what you think and what your mind is saying isn't the truth that you need to live off. It's a suggestion, advice offered to you to make the decision on what you do next. And this is going to be a topic that we're going to explore more and more. So I appreciate your time, and I hope that there was something in here that might speak to you and be helpful. I look forward to next week talking a little bit more together about the idea of how to stick to New Year's resolutions and how to deal with this gap between intention and action.